Welcome to the SIWIKE Podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE Podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here with one of our new guest hosts, Ayanna. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm fantastic as always. So Ayanna comes to us from a background in journalism and business and not-for-profits and a whole bunch of other things. So Ayanna, what would you say that you're doing now?
Well, right now I'm an executive director. I'm the executive director for a nonprofit organization called Resilient Coders. We're headquartered in Boston, but we have a location in Philadelphia. And our mission is social justice through economic empowerment. We educate young adults, 18 to 30 years old, preparing them to become software engineers. It's a free and stipended program. And once they complete the 20-week boot camp, we help them get placed into jobs with an average salary of $94,000 a year. We love to work with low-income communities of color, and they're trained in general object-oriented programming principles, such as JavaScript, React, Node, HTML, CSS, and MongoDB. It's a wonderful job, wonderful mission, and a wonderful opportunity.
For sure. Sounds amazing. And I'd love if we could kind of rewind and go back in time and figure out how we got there. But what was Ayanna like as a kid? What are some early childhood memories? What were you like growing up?
I love this question. I was very, very loquacious. I did not stop asking questions. I was always busy doing something. My parents, they tried to keep up, and at times they would try to answer my questions, but sometimes my questions were more philosophical, like how far is the moon from the sun, or how deep is the ocean? I just remember asking questions that now, in retrospect, as an adult, I can see why at times my grandmother and my parents would just say, "Can you just be quiet for a second?" And so I remember I think I was about 5 years old. I had a lot of questions, and my grandmother was watching the news, and I just kept asking her questions. And she said to me, "You need to be a journalist because you love asking questions." And that resonated with me. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but it just kind of, the seed germinated, or the seed was planted. And I thought to myself, I like to ask questions. My grandma says I should be a journalist. So when people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I just said a journalist, because that was one of the things that my grandmother said. And it also made sense because I do things like, growing up, we had a map of Africa. My father had a map of Africa on the wall in my room. And I had 2 sisters and a brother, and my brother wasn't born at the time, but I would ask my sisters to sit down on the bed and watch me do the news.
Okay.
And so I'd have a long ruler, and I'd be looking, and I'd be saying, okay, today in the weather, and I would pretend to be a broadcaster because, that was just natural for me to do. I didn't affiliate that at the time with being a journalist or a broadcaster, but it was just something that was natural for me to want to be in front of people, speaking and communicating and asking questions and getting information out of folks.
That's amazing. So kudos to the power of planting seeds to your grandmother. So
Yes,
folks out there,
yes.
just beware of what you tell people, because they might take it to heart and they might start doing little presentations for their siblings and things like that.
Yes.
So it sounds like that grandma had a great influence. How about some of the other folks in the family, parents, siblings, cousins, who else kind of reinforced or adjusted kind of that view of journalism or other things that you were into as you were growing up?
My parents were very big on reading. Like I read a lot, and a treat. My father, he was a hard worker. He worked in sanitation for the city of Philadelphia, and he would come home after working 12 hours, 14 hours, and his treat for us was to go to the library. And all 4 of us, or the 3 girls at the time, my brother was too young, we thought it was like going to Chuck E. Cheese's today or Dave and Buster's or some like amusement park to go to the library. And when the library increased the book limit so we could take out 20 books a week, it was a gift. And
Wow.
we were so excited. And my father, like, I'd read all my books and then I'd come back and say, then my sisters, we would switch books and we would read each other's books. And then we would say, okay, Dad, can we go back? And it would be like 3 days later. He's like, listen, you have to slow down reading these books. So my parents were really, really instrumental in creating and cultivating that passion for learning and creativity and imagination. He would read the books to us. We would act the books out. So that gave me the idea that I could write. And so in fifth grade, we used to have these weekly readers, and I'm really aging myself. We used to have a weekly reader, and in the weekly reader you could buy things. And so I had money, and my mom said, well, you can, choose what you want from your weekly reader. And I chose to buy a journal. And it was a little diary. It was so cute. It had a little lock on it. I remember it had multiple colors, crayons on it. And so all the colors of the rainbow was crayons, and they had the pages were gold leaf, and there was a little key that you could lock the journal. And I thought it was like the best gift in the world. And I committed to write in this journal every night as a fifth grader. So I started writing in my journal every night. And I say it was a habit that that followed me through college. Every
Mm.
night I write in a journal. So over here on my shelf, you can see all of my journals from I don't have the one my mom has the ones from like has the journals from like elementary school and middle school, but I still have my teenage journals. I did not let those out of my sight, but I can go back and see just who I was at that time and what I was writing about. My mom, one day she was going through papers and she started to look at my journals, and every day, Suki, every day I wrote about food. Today I
Okay.
ate this. I love today. My mom gave me $3 and I was able to go to Burger King. Last night we had this for dinner. Like every day, I talked about like the food that I had. So that just kind of leans into the fact that I love food. I love
Hmm.
different I love great meals. I love great experiences. So I can follow who I was as a child through adolescence and young adulthood through my journals. And that just that was cultivated because my parents allowed me to read, allowed me to create, and told me that I was a good writer. And that led to my career in journalism.
That's amazing. And I'm wondering if you could share maybe a couple of influential or memorable books that you read. Obviously, in your version of Chuck E. Cheese, trading 20 books a week or every 3 days. That's a huge. You probably went through the entire library. But is there any couple, one or two that kind of stick out? And then also maybe one or two food experiences that you might have written about that come to mind. I'd love if you could share a little bit about those.
Sure. So the first book, I still remember. I learned how to read when I was 3 going into 4.
Okay.
And I learned how to read using a book called People Read. It was a
Okay.
small book, and I still remember that book. It was called People Read. And I learned how to read. I wanted to prove to my mom I could read the book because I didn't want to take a nap. So that's
Okay.
one that I remember. I loved all of Judy Blume's books.
Mm.
Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing was one of my favorites. Like I took it to my teacher and I said, can we read this? And she read it aloud to the class, and we would just sit in class as kids and just laugh aloud. I remember the robust laughter from my classmates. So that was one that I remember reading and just being able to share that. I loved all of the Babysitters Club's books. Like my parents would reward me with those books. And so I had a catalog of like all of the Babysitters Club's books. As I got older, I remember the conversations that I had with my father reading To Kill a Mockingbird. That
Mm,
was a
okay.
book that, um, just was very riveting for me. It kind of tore the Band-Aid off of like my innocence of thinking that the world was the way my life was, just being
Mm.
surrounded by love and community and acceptance. So that's another. And there's a book called Black Boy by Richard White that I read in my young adolescence. I think I read that when about 13. And that was one of the books that made me feel like I wanted to be an author and
Mm.
write a book. So I started to like write my own book. So there were lots. This is a great question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that, but if you look behind me, these are just some of the books that I still love reading. Reading is still a big hobby for me.
That's amazing. And I'd love if you could share, if you remember, any like fond food diary moments or anything that was memorable from the writing aspect of it that you can recall.
Sure. So my mom was and still is a great cook.
Mm.
And I was very fortunate to have a mom who was home with us during the day. And when she did work, she worked at night, and then she later had her own business. But my mom would make dinners during the week that were like gourmet. And
Mm.
so, there were days we'd come home from school and she would just say, "Oh, I knew you had a busy day at school, or I knew you probably didn't eat a good lunch." So she would make us homemade pizzas.
Okay.
And so that was one that I clearly remember. But I also loved coming home when she made lasagna for dinner, like
Okay.
during the week. And she also made really great spaghetti. So I was always happy when she created like those like big meals. And I could just remember coming in from school and dropping my book bag, and you could smell the food before you walked in the house. And it was to the point where my mom was such a community person, and she was so giving that other people would like knock on the door and say, "Hey, may I have some of what you cooked?" And she would share. So yeah, she was just a great cook, and she made some dynamite meals for us, and she showed her love. We knew, as an adult now, in retrospect, I can just feel like her love through the quality of food that she made for us during the week as we were going to school. I didn't know anything about fake potatoes, fake macaroni and cheese. I remember someone gave me powdered potatoes or, boxed potatoes. And I remember over a friend's house and I said, "What is this?" Like, I didn't know what it was. Everything was very fresh. Before it was organic and, gluten-free and all of that, my mom was very serious about having a garden and growing things and making sure our food was fresh and making sure that we ate well and making sure that we were fueled before we went to school. So we had breakfast. She was just really great at doing that for her children.
That's amazing. It's always nice when you have an amazing upbringing, and kudos to all moms who are amazing cooks, because that's I definitely love the food that my mom made as well. So can totally reminisce my own version of it as I was
Yes,
growing up.
yes.
So now we kind of have the foundations of you as a reader, a little bit as a writer, writing about all these amazing food experiences that you've had. And wondering if you could share a little bit about that journey into journalism. Was that pretty straightforward, going into journalism school, picking a program and things like that? And how was the experience like through college?
So in high school, I stuck with my passion for writing. I was a writer for our newspaper. I wrote for our community newspaper, but I also joined Kid Time News. And Kid Time News was a program that took place. A local TV station, Channel 17, would invite teenagers to come and just do a 60-second blurb on anything that we wanted to write about. So that's when I started to kind of merge into broadcast, because I was able to produce these pieces and I had to work with a teacher. We would present our ideas to her and she would say, her name was Miss Joyce Stubbs, and she would tell us like, "No, this is crap. Take that back. Think of something else." And I would always get her approval. So I would come up with things like in the fall. I remember one time I said, we had some ideas. And so I came to her and I said, Miss Stubbs, what if we did a story on why leaves change color? And we educate kids on why, how the chlorophyll breaks down in the leaves and why they die and how that process works. And she was like, wow, that's amazing. So that gave me like the credence and the belief in myself to say, hey, I can produce news stories. I can write it out. We would practice. And so while the kids were watching afternoon cartoons, you would just see a blurb of me and another fellow student, like just doing this, reading from the simulcast and being able to look and read and look in the camera and be in the studio. And so that really endorsed the fact that, hey, this is something I can do, I want to do. And I applied to colleges and knowing that I wanted to be in broadcast journalism. And I got accepted to Temple University, and that was my major.
That's amazing. So shout out to all those supportive teachers that kind of root for folks and give them the opportunity to follow their passion. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about how was the journalism experience? Like, is it everything that you hoped it would be? And then what was the journey out into the working world?
So my journalism experience wasn't what I thought it would be in college. However, I will say I had excellent instructors. I remember one, Vince Hill. I'm still connected to Vince Hill. He was my first news writing instructor. And there was another, I can't remember the other professor's name, but he recommended me for an internship. But the internship wasn't at a newspaper. The internship was for the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau in the PR department. And here's where the monkey wrench is thrown into the story. Because I was able to write and create influential pieces as far as PR and be able to help a person say, oh, well, let's talk about the tourism of Philadelphia. Let's talk about the new Cezanne exhibition that came to Philadelphia in the late 1990s. Or let's talk about the new museums that are opening and how they're revamping the Rodin. Or let's look at this. And so that just opened my eyes to, wait, I can write, but it doesn't necessarily have to be for newspaper. I can tell stories and I can influence how a person is receiving someone's image or receiving the image of a city. It just began to open me up to the other possibilities that existed. And so I interned with the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau pretty much for the full span of my college career. I was there for 3 years. The only reason I left is that I was accepted into now they call it a fellowship, but at the time it was a White House internship. So I left in my junior year and interned at the White House in the upper press office. And I was able to work with the senior, the White House press secretary, Mike McCurry. And that also had an indelible impact on me on just what the power of the media to be in the room. They called it a daily gaggle. And I would be in the daily gaggle with like Cokie Roberts, Sam Donaldson, Wolf Blitzer. This was in 1998. So to be there and to be their gopher, to hear the stories, to watch Mike McCurry pitch the stories and say to them, hey, we're going to talk about this, but we're not going to talk about that. To be in the White House and meet Coretta Scott King and Jesse Jackson, to see Alan Greenspan and Janet Reno, all of these folks who were running the country, and to just be my, this little girl from West Philadelphia. In the midst of all of this, to walk down a hallway and see the President of the United States, and just have this mindset of, wow, I'm here. I am in the, planted in the middle of democracy in some way. It was a phenomenal opportunity, and it just opened me up to all of the vast possibilities for me in the field of communications.
That's amazing. And I'm wondering if you can continue on that story from after graduation. So now you have all these possibilities, like met a lot of amazing people as well. What was the process to kind of take that and get into the working world?
So when I finished college, I wanted to be a producer. I thought that I would stay in broadcasting. And for folks who, start their career in broadcasting, and I didn't know at the time, but that you really got to start from the bottom up, and you don't get to start always in a main market. You start in somewhere. Like for me, I got a job offer in Yuma, Arizona, on a reservation, and it was for $9.50 an hour. And my family, they were very proud of me that I graduated from college, that, I graduated with honors. But it just became a different conversation when I said, okay, I have a job opportunity. I need to move to, Yuma, Arizona, and I'm going to be making $9.50 an hour. And it was just like, wait, how are you going to take care of yourself with $9.50 an hour? Like, where are you going to live? Who do we know in Yuma, Arizona? Why did you come up with this idea? Didn't you go to college? And I can clearly remember my dad saying to me, if you were going to go to college to make $9.50 an hour, you could have just worked for the city. He worked for the city of Philadelphia. And so just that mindset of, no, you have to find a different way. We cannot afford to support you in this dream. I had a sister who was at Drexel University. Her major was finance. I had another sister who was a year behind her, who was about to, graduate from high school and getting ready to matriculate through college. And then 2 years behind her, my brother is, he was on his way to Villanova University to be a CS major. So, it was like, I didn't have the freedom to say, oh, well, I'll just go and just find myself. I needed to figure something out fast.
Right.
And so I graduated from college, low income, having debt, having student loans. And, although I worked my way through school, I still I wasn't able to pay my debt down completely. And I had to make a decision. I had to say, okay, who's hiring now in my field? And because I was connected to the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau, I had a contact someone who worked on the team who was now working in advertising. And she said, hey, we have a junior account executive position available in advertising. Would you like to take it? Well, it was still a low income, a low salary. However, I could stay home and take this opportunity in advertising. And in advertising, I still had an opportunity to write. I was still able to produce. I wrote scripts for some of our clients, and I worked with multiple industries. McDonald's was a client. The city of Philadelphia was a client. The Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance was a client. We had healthcare clients. University of Penn was a client. So I was able to learn the fundamentals of developing marketing strategies and plans for across various industries. So I'd switch ahead. 1 minute I'm working with McDonald's, switched ahead. Next minute I'm working with the VP of marketing for University of Penn, and we're opening a restaurant. Switched ahead. The next minute we're developing a plan for health partners, and we're doing commercials, and we're writing the commercial out. So it was a great opportunity, and it just kept expanding me to like, okay, can you do this? I don't know. We'll see. And so my answer to can you do this would always be yes. Yes, I can do this. And then I'd run into the corner and learn, or I get, my ideas smacked down and I'd go home and lick my wounds, but I come back fighting for more. So it just gave me the opportunity to say, can you do this? Can I do it? Yes. And that opportunity opened me up to marketing. And that's still the basic foundation for how I've been able to integrate in and out of different circles and industries, because I've learned that at 23 years old, being there for a few years, just how to keep switching my brain and my hats on basically like whatever the clients need. Can you do it? Yes, I can. And so that opened me up. I wasn't in the White House, I wasn't on television, but I was able to still write speeches. I was able to still speak. I was able to be on radio and do voiceovers. I was able to write scripts. I was able to write press releases. I was able to write stories for newspapers. So it just gave me a full scope and a full opportunity to immerse my talent and my skills in different spaces and places.
That's amazing. I love what you said about, well, I don't know if you call it a mantra, but when someone asks, can you do this? It's automatic yes. There's no question. You'll figure it out along the way, and having that confidence that you can figure out, I think is so important and something that folks should start cultivating in themselves, because you can figure it out. I mean, there's so many resources, the internet, even like chat GPT and AI now that you can even ask for help and questions and stuff. And I love how you said that it was networking and opportunities, staying connected with folks that kind of led you to, I guess, some of these opportunities in the future. And I love if you kind of further on the story. So you've obviously done some work in the not-for-profit space, and then you end up taking like your MBA and had various leadership roles up until what you're doing now. But can you walk us through a little bit of those parts of your career as well?
Sure. So after working for in advertising, and that's anyone who works in advertising and marketing, if you're listening now, I know you are busy and I know your hours are long. And I know that switching the hats with multiple clients is difficult. So any client services or client relations opportunity, I know that you do a lot of juggling. And sometimes it's not sustainable. Like you can do it for a few years, but the long hours, the fast paced, unless like that's your jam. At some point, I was like, okay, I want to just have one client. I just want to have one job. I just want to work with one client. And I did work for. I just found another opportunity and just became a marketing manager for a nonprofit, and that experience was very rewarding. But then I had a pivot, and a pivot. It was an opportunity that came up to work for my church, and because I'm a faith-filled person, I'm a believer. I thought at the time that just working for that particular nonprofit in an underserved community, it related more to my purpose and my passion for rebuilding communities. And I thought that it would be. I didn't think that it would be as hard as it was, and I'm just being very transparent about that. Like I didn't think that working in that community would be as tough as it was, and it was tough. I grew a lot from the opportunity. But the thing that I learned from that is sometimes people can present you with an opportunity to say, hey, this is the best thing for you, and here's why. You really need to take an introspective look into, is this going to work for me or is this going to work for them? And so one of the things that I wish I knew at that time was it's okay to say no. Like I was so used to saying, yes, I can do it, that I didn't know at the time that it was okay to say no. It was okay to say, not right now, or that's not, I really don't see that for myself or feel that for myself. It's okay to say no. So it took me until I was by this time I was probably about 27 years old, where I just had to learn to say, you know what, this doesn't align with my goals. I'm going to step away from this and do something else. And I knew, based on the work that I've been able to accomplish in the community that I've been able to serve, I knew that communications was my thing. But at this time now, I'm in operations. I'm running a business. I'm running a church. I'm running a community. I've been able to build grassroots campaigns and open up a food bank and start an after school program. So now I know, like, okay, I'm a businesswoman. I'm not just a communicator. I'm not just this marketing person. I'm a businesswoman. I get things done. And guess what? I think I want to invest in myself in the space of business. And I want to go back to school and get my master's degree. And at the time, my father, I was also enduring life changes. And sometimes when we write down our goals and we write down what we want to do and we have a plan, we don't take into consideration that life is going to happen while all of these things are happening. So here's life happening to me. The man that I was engaged to, he dies of cancer. That wasn't planned. That wasn't something on my radar. So here I'm dealing with this trauma. I'm dealing with this grief. And subsequently, right after he passes, my dad gets sick. And my dad is my hero. My dad is my best friend. He's my everything. And then he dies. So I have two back-to-back losses of men who were so instrumental in my life that I felt like, what am I going to do now? And so I went back to my roots, and I thought the best way for me to keep my mind together is for me to immerse myself in learning, immerse myself in reading. And so I moved to Arizona because it was just beautiful and had a great friend who lived there. I moved to Arizona to just take myself away from everybody and everything. I was tired of people looking at me and with sad eyes, like when you're grieving, people are like, they care about you, but I wanted to be able to move forward in a place where no one knew me. And I needed the beauty and the sanctity and the peace of Arizona. Moved there, got my master's degree in business, and worked ironically for the American Cancer Society, which was very healing because a lot of the people I got to work with were cancer survivors, had lost someone in their family due to cancer. And so I was able to be around people who were aiding in my healing and aiding in my development. And so I did that. I finished my master's, came back home. And when I went back to Arizona, had my degree, I was so excited, looking forward to promotion and all of the possibilities. And I was laid off. Another piece of life that you don't expect to happen. So what am I going to do? Am I going to just, sit here? So I came home, came back to Philadelphia. And that's when a lot of opportunities and, just operations began to open for me. I started to work in my first management position where I was managing a team of people and realizing, wow, I have never managed people. I may need to work on my management skills. And I was telling one of my coachees last night, we were laughing, and there were some things that I would say to my team that would get me canceled today. So there were things that I would say like, just to say, hey, you can't wear this, or hey, you can't come to work like that. Those things wouldn't fly today. And so I'm so grateful for the mentors that I had. Get yourself a mentor if you don't have one. And the classes that I was able to take, just continuing to stay in classes, learning about constructive criticism, learning how to give, how to give feedback properly, how to win your team, how to lead instead of manage, how to be a great leader and to be someone that folks want to follow. Why do people want to follow you? Like, that was a question that one of our instructors asked, like, why would someone want to follow you? And it's a question I still ask myself. And so just continuing to develop in that space has allowed me to just become more empathetic with the people that I lead, as well as those now that I'm in this space who are, my age when I got started, and they're coming right out of college, to be able to say, okay, how can I be a champion for them? How can I be a sponsor for them? How can I be a mentor or a big sister to them, so that some of the things that I needed as a young professional, I can provide to them. So I want to become what I needed to the next generation.
That's amazing. A lot of great information there. And I really like how you said that it's almost like the universe conspiring for you, where having that role at the American Cancer Society actually allowed you to heal a little bit, which I think was amazing. And then learning about kind of those management skills. I think I was chatting with someone yesterday where there's a stat there. Typical people have management or leadership positions when they're 36. And then they get trained on being a leader when they're 40. So there's like a bit of a disconnect in terms of like that learning. So it's great that you're able to find a mentor and things like that as well. And I love as we kind of wrap up the episode, you shared a lot of your SWIKE already, the stuff I wish I knew earlier. So things like, can you do this? Yes. Just answer that, or it's okay to say no, or getting a mentor. Are any of those ones that you'd want to elaborate a little bit more on, or any other ones that you'd want to add in terms of stuff that you'd want to share with the young Ayannas out there listening and are kind of listening and identifying with a lot of the things that you've done? What sort of SWIKE would you have for your younger self?
To just wrap it up, there's a mantra that I go by now, and it's, if you don't have a vision for yourself, someone will always have a vision for you. And 9 times out of 10, it will benefit them. And so to my younger self, I would say, and to the younger Ayannas and to those who are listening who are early in their career, 1, you have to be teachable. And 2, you also have to have the confidence in yourself that you can do it. And so sometimes I waited for people to endorse me, to see the good in me, to see the value in me. But you have to see it in yourself. If you don't see it, someone else may see it, and they'll use that to their advantage. But take what you know about yourself, find your tribe, find the people who will pour into you, and use that to advance. Don't if the opportunity you had before it didn't work out, it's okay. Move forward, keep going. Don't give up, don't quit because it didn't work. Advance, persist, keep going. But I want you to find your tribe and find the folks that you can trust to build into you, so that as you're moving through your career, you are supported by people who really believe in you.
I think a lot of that is interrelated to what you shared before, where oftentimes people will say, well, that's easier said than done. But I think part of the key to that is what you said about the confidence, where confidence doesn't mean that you aren't nervous, or you're not anxious, or you're stressed. Confidence just means that you believe enough in yourself that you can do it. Right. And you can figure it out there. It doesn't mean that it'll be perfect, but at least you can figure it out. So I think that's all amazing. And again, taking that time, maybe even this weekend, to create that vision for yourself. Otherwise, someone will have that vision for you, I think is great words of wisdom. So for folks that want to connect with you, where might be the best place for them to reach out to? And then what are some of the future aspirations that we could look forward to hearing about in the future?
Yes, I would love to connect. I'm on LinkedIn, Ayanna Lott-Pollard on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Instagram. You can find me. You can't find me on Twitter. So I have Twitter, but I just haven't been able to immerse myself in Twitter. But you can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn. In the future, I am a coach to young adults and to emerging leaders. So in the future, you could find me on my website, ayannalott.com, and lots of information and sharing of my experience, and just imparting some of that wisdom. I'd love to have folks come meet me over there as well.
That's amazing. And we'll definitely link to all those places in the show notes. And thank you so much, Ayanna, for sharing your story, all the way from journalism to making an impact, and all the trials and tribulations in between. And hopefully we'll have you back for a future episode.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Lukey. I really enjoyed this. I feel like it's been very therapeutic to just go back and think about that process and how I started, who I was, and who I am now, and just really be grateful for all the people who've helped me along the way. So thank you.
No, my pleasure. Take care, and we'll chat soon.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us on the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Lukidanu, Lukidanu, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.